Welcome to another edition of Reading in Transcendental Literature. I am Sadhu-sanga Das, and we're continuing our reading in the book called Renunciation Through Wisdom, a book written by my spiritual master, one of my spiritual masters, my primary instructing spiritual master about materialism and how to cure it. Actually, that's what this first section is about. The section is called How to Cure the Material Disease. The previous one we read was part 1, and it was the description of what is the material disease. So if you haven't seen that yet, and you're checking out this video, check out part 1, and that's all on the YouTube channel under Sadhu-sanga. Easy to find. So yeah, it's easy to find. So we'll just start reading and get into this. I'm just going to be absorbed in reading, and that's about it. Pretty simple. I like to keep it simple. So this chapter is called Knowledge of the Supreme, and this section is called as How to Cure the Material Disease. The general populace simply follows the dictates and decisions of the leaders, who are bereft of any spiritual realization. Therefore, it is advised that the leaders of society should act responsibly. The easy path to prosperity opens up when these leaders intelligently put into practice the precepts of karma yoga. It was explained in the first part. Without first becoming adept at curing one's own disease, why try to treat many patients? This is unreasonable. First, a leader has to adopt the principles of karma yoga in his own life. Then he has to diagnose the disease of the people. Then the medicine is to be prescribed and the proper diet given. Simply to offer the suffering people a sense-gratificatory cure that titillates their senses, this is not going to make them healthy. Rather, this will spread the disease further. And at one stage, the doctor himself will be infected and finally die from it. Oof. Forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord Vishnu is human society's real and original disease. So if one does not treat this ailment, but instead shows insincere and shallow concern for the patients, one might give them some momentary relief and pleasure, but ultimately such a course of action cannot cure them permanently. If the patient goes for proper medicine and diet, but is instead administered bad medicine and diet, then he is certainly in the jaws of death. Here we go. The remnants of food offered to the Supreme Lord, prasadam, is the best diet for all patients, and to discuss and hear topics glorifying the Supreme Lord, to see the Lord's deity form and offer worship to him, and to completely surrender oneself to the Lord, these constitute the greatest medicine, the panacea. These activities are the only secure path to prosperity, whereas other activities will wreak disaster. The practices of devotional service to the Lord can never cause harm to society. Rather, they can only usher in an age of opportunities and benedictions. Those who are opportunists and financial speculators should calmly consider these facts. Stalwarts of society like Mahatma Gandhi tried various ways to usher in an age of peace, but because such endeavors are not inspired or blessed by the spiritually evolved saints, they are not turning out successful, nor will they be fruitful in the future. The god of the monists or Mayavadis cannot eat, see, or hear. Such a concocted, formless god can never bring peace to the world. How can a god who has no sensory organs see the miseries of the people or hear their heartfelt prayers? To worship such a formless god in the name of searching for spiritual truth can only produce misfortune in the world, never good fortune. In the Mayavad school, of philosophy, discussions on pure knowledge can throw some light on the real nature of the Absolute Truth, but they are unable to fully reveal the esoteric and personal aspects of the Supreme Absolute Being. These dry empirical discussions fall short of their objective, a complete understanding of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, only if leaders like Mahatma Gandhi strive to realize the Supreme Absolute Person, not a formless energy, can they truly benefit human society. Conditioned human beings are expert at dealing with this material body and mind. The gross materialists, who cannot see beyond materialistic activities and find it impossible to believe that besides our material universe a spiritual universe exists, completely identifying with the body, such materialists are like animals, simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are so captivated by these four animalistic propensities that they lose the power to discriminate between sinful and pious activities. They tirelessly endeavor for a little sense gratification, but all their efforts end in futility. Many modern scientists have taken up the role of priests, facilitating such gross activities, which are unbeneficial and fatal. These scientists have made available a variety of products meant simply to titillate the senses. What a word. Thus creating a deadly competitive mood among the materialists, which has in turn caused an obnoxious atmosphere in society. People think they become free and independent through such sensual activities, but actually they become more tightly bound up in chains. Just like when you get drunk, you think you're free, but then the next day you're strapped to your bed with a hangover. The greater their accumulated wealth, the greater their anxiety and depravity. As much as they try to usurp the Supreme Lord's position of being the only enjoyer, that much and more are they drawn into the jaws of a horrible death. And these activities make a Herculean task out of such a simple and basic activity as sustaining the body, which needs a little nourishment only. A grade higher than this mean class of gross materialists are those who believe in the transmigration of the soul, or reincarnation. These are the fruitive workers who perform pious activities, such as giving and charity, but their only motive is to ensure that their next life is one of luxury and sense enjoyment. Neither of these grades of fruitive workers realize that both pious as well as sinful activities cause bondage. These materialists do not know that karma yoga, activity performed without fruitive desire, is the best form of activity. Therefore, they often think that the karma yogis are as attached to this material world as the gross materialists. The sole motive of the karma yogi, however, is to instruct the members of society for their benefit. As Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, says in the Bhagavad-Gita 3.25, quote, "As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path." Like others, sages who are in knowledge of the Absolute maintain their bodies, but the difference is that the goal of all their activities is to satisfy Lord Vishnu. Although the general mass of people may wrongly think that the sages' activities are the same as their own, in fact the sages are performing karma yoga, not fruitive activities. Present times have seen the widespread expansion of modern science and technology in our world in a variety of forms, which have entangled society more and more in the vicious cycle of karma. Huge factories, universities, hospitals, and so on are certain to entangle society further in the karmic cycle. Bygone ages never witnessed such huge, complex arrangements for gross materialistic activities. Wrong and simply bad association has tightly bound up the innocent populace in mean activities. But the learned man, the karma yogi, can show society how to perform all these activities for the satisfaction of the Lord. Previously, sages arranged for Lord Vishnu's deity to be worshipped in practically every household, thereby creating the atmosphere for people to become karma yogis. Similarly, it is now urgent that similar arrangements be made to worship and serve Lord Vishnu in the huge factories, mercantile firms, hospitals, and so on. This can firmly establish true equality among men under a spiritual banner. Lord Narayan is not poor. He is the Supreme Lord of Lords, and hence attempts to say that the poor people are Narayan is foolish. Rather, by widely organizing the worship and service of the Lord, one can greatly benefit everyone, including the poor. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself in many forms, but generally the sages have chosen 3 of his multifarious forms to serve and worship as the deity. They are Lakshmi Narayan, Sita Rama, and Radha Krishna. Of course, all in India. These 3 deity couples are widely worshipped all over the Indian subcontinent. Therefore, we request the owners of large factories and business firms to establish the worship and service of any of these 3 deities in their establishment. The owners can then distribute prasadam, offered food, to everyone. This practice will repair any disagreement between worker and owner, because both will become karma yogis. Most factory workers and other laborers cannot maintain a good character and thus slide down to depravities. And if such derelicts increase in population, the world has no chance for a prosperous and fortunate future. But if the owners give their laborers and office staff prasadam, then both the givers and the receivers will gradually become purified and more attracted to the Supreme Lord. The whole society will become elevated, civilized, and united in harmony. On the other hand, by trying to achieve only their selfish interests, the owners create a situation in which any harmony or unity is not only fragile but dangerous. And when the owners fire these degraded laborers in pursuit of their class self-interest, neither the owners themselves nor the laborers are benefited. Soon the workers automatically turn inimical towards their employers. When laborers and bosses perform activities that are not intended to please Lord Vishnu, and are in fact troublesome to the Lord, they end up arguing and fighting with each other, thus creating an awful situation in society. The communists and socialists are spending money, intelligence, and even lives propagating their isms. The Bolsheviks revolted, disrupting the entire land of Russia and promising to fulfill the people's dream of a prosperous household life on a mass scale. The workers' unions are constantly at odds with the employers. All these complicated problems have one simple solution. Everyone should perform karma yoga, or work meant to please the Supreme Lord. The endeavors human beings have made to it's a weird sentence to me. The endeavors humans begins have made to establish a close and harmonious relationship with one another have culminated in the United Nations. This organization is based on the concept of the family unit. The gradual expansion of the family unit to a large community, to a village, to a state, to a country, and finally, to a continent has given the clue for the formation of the United Nations. The thing to be noted, however, is its center. What is the central attraction? If the process of expansion was reversed, we would end up with the human body as the basic unit. The senses are of prime importance in the body. More important than the senses is the mind, then intelligence, and finally the ego, or false ego. And more important than the false ego is the real self, a pure spiritual being that is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, the conclusion is that the fountainhead of everything is Lord Vishnu. For this reason, Prahlad Maharaj says, quote, "Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life, and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects, cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. Those whose sight of center, those who lose sight of the center and become attracted to the externals are swallowed and misguided. Are shallow and misguided. These misguided persons are in a sense blind, hence the world cannot expect them to give any guidance toward enlightenment. However much these blind people may pretend to guide and benefit other blind people, factually they are fully controlled by the will of Providence. We should make the effort to understand that the cause and source of everything is Lord Vishnu, the Absolute Truth, and that the fullest manifestation of this Absolute Truth is Lord Krishna, the source of even Lord Vishnu. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita 7:7, quote, "O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me," unquote. Thus the ultimate source of everything is indeed Lord Krishna himself, the all-attractive Supreme Personality of Godhead. After considerable deliberation, the sages, in the past, concluded that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Being, the origin of all expansions and manifestations of the Supreme Absolute Truth. As the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.28 declares, quote, "All of the above-mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead." Unquote. Later we will discuss more thoroughly the subject of the expansions of Lord Vishnu, but for now let us establish that Lord Krishna is the highest aspect of the Supreme. The Brahma Samhita 5.1 confirms this, quote, "Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the supreme cause of all causes." Thus, if we can transcend the material body and its physical relationships and become connected with everyone through Lord Krishna, the original Godhead, we can relate on a platform of truth and reality. Then the actual meaning of fraternity and equality will crystallize. So, that section was called, once again, How to Cure the Material Disease. Continuing, the living entity's real identity. A man's relationship with his sister's husband is based on his relationship with his sister. The brother-in-law, prior to his marriage with the sister, was a complete stranger to the man. And when their children become the man's nieces and nephews, his relationship with them is also based on his sister. Similar relationships grow up among races and nationalities, centering on the country of birth. Thus we have Indians, Bengalis, Punjabis, Germans, and so on. We also find relationships centering on religious beliefs. Thus there are Hindus, Muslims, Christians, and so on. But however much we might endeavor to adapt to such partial personalities of the self, and however we try to increase the number of these fractional identities, we will remain infinitesimal and partial. Being parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, if we do not aspire to serve him, then we forego our actual identity and fall down into nescience. An appropriate parallel is the functioning of the body. If a limb refuses to execute its usual duty, it becomes useless to the body. Similarly, if our activities are not focused on Lord Krishna, they are rendered impotent and valueless. The eternal constitutional position of the self is to serve the Supreme Lord Krishna. In fact, all our sufferings start from our refusal to act in our original capacity as Lord Krishna's eternal servants. Therefore, the prime duty of all living entities is to become reinstated in their original constitutional position. The first step towards that goal is to perform karma yoga. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is stated, quote, "The living entity is bound around the neck by the chains of Maya illusion, because he has forgotten that he is eternally a servant of Krishna." Unquote. People in general are ignorant and addicted to fruitive activities. Without disturbing their minds, the karma yogi can benefit them by explaining the truth about man's eternal position as Lord Krishna's servant. Thus in the Bhagavad-Gita 3.26, Lord Krishna instructs, quote, "So as not to disrupt the minds of the ignorant men attached to the fruitive activities of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, one should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness." It is very difficult to convince those who adhere to fruitive activities that they should render devotional service to Lord Krishna. The reason is that most fruitive workers are foolish, fallen, and impious. Therefore, all their activities are whimsical and motivated by evil. their intelligence and expertise thus utilized in defiance of the Supreme Lord. They are totally in the grip of the illusory potency, Maya, and so they imagine themselves to be the Supreme Lord himself, or at least his biggest competitor. Like the demon Shishupal, they simply try to enjoy this material world in various ways. In fact, their hopes for enjoying this world are just make-believe, or Maya, and this make-believe yearning leaves them hopelessly cheated. Yet they cannot give up the hopes to enjoy. And when they realize that fruitive activities are futile and are more or less forced to renounce them, then such renunciation becomes merely another illusory scheme for a greater enjoyment. Those who hanker after the fruits of their actions undertake many hardships in executing their work. Their imagination wanders like an untethered bull, and all the while their mind dictates to them that they are the actual enjoyers. Therefore, without disturbing the minds of these foolish, perverted karmis, the intelligent person should engage them in doing what they are expert in and using the fruits in Lord Krishna's service. Such a course of action will automatically uncover the fruitive worker's eternal relationship with Lord Krishna. So to instruct the people for their benefit, the servant of Krishna, who is freed from the reactions of fruitive activities, leads a life seemingly like that of the fruitive workers, but actually he is all along performing karma yoga. Had not Lord Krishna mercifully instructed the process of karma yoga to his devotee Sri Arjuna, the ignorant souls would have suffered miserably for all time. These wretched karmis have the noose of Maya constantly wrapped around their necks and are living from one distress to another, but because the Lord's deluding potency covers their intelligence, they cannot understand any of this. However much they might pretend to be the controllers, they are being continuously goaded by Maya, illusion, who leaves them helpless and impotent. Lord Krishna has explained this in the Bhagavad-Gita 3:27. Quote, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. Unquote. The foolish karmi cannot comprehend that because he has forgotten Lord Krishna and is trying to usurp his position, the Lord's external potency, Maya, has tied a noose around his neck with the rope of the three modes of material nature and is making him suffer excruciating pains. Although all of his activities are within the grip of the three modes of material nature and orchestrated by Maya, still the grossly foolish karmi believes that he is the master of his situation. Thus he bruises himself with trying to make better arrangements. Bruises. Bruises is a good word to use at this point too. Thus he busies himself with trying to make better arrangements for living in the world of duality. Lord Krishna instructs us that the living entities are his separated parts. The duty of the part is to serve the whole. A complete body has different parts and limbs, such as hands, legs, eyes, and ears. The hands and legs work the hardest, but they do not refuse to give food to the stomach, although the stomach does very little. On the other hand, if the hands and legs act contrarily, and actually refuse to feed the stomach, then an impossible situation is created. There is no question of the hands and legs trying to enjoy in this situation, because the lack of food in the stomach will cause the hands and legs to become weak and useless. The book Hitopadesha explains this point in detail in the story, The Belly and the Senses. Lord Krishna is like the life air and the soul of the massive body of the entire cosmos. In several places in the Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna makes this point, that he is the origin and cause of everything. Especially notable are chapter 7, verse 7, quote, there is no truth superior to me, unquote, and chapter 9, verse 24, quote, I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices, unquote. Therefore, how can there still be any doubt that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and that the living beings are his eternal servitors? We have forgotten this simple truth, and thus, instead of using our mind and senses in the Supreme Lord's service, we ourselves are posing as little Supreme Lords and utilizing our mind and senses to enjoy this material world. This is Maya, illusion. Nowadays, different societies are shooting up like mushrooms. One such society that has made its presence felt claims to have started a movement for establishing the ideal kingdom of Lord Ramachandra. But the kingdom of Rama is propagating seems to be without Lord Rama. Lord Rama's biggest competitor was a demon named Ravana, and the present-day descendants of Ravana are also busy trying to kill Lord Rama. So, where is the question of wanting to usher in the golden age of Lord Rama? If one is sincere about establishing the ideal kingdom of Lord Rama, then everything in the world should be engaged in Lord Rama's service. But the attempt to reduce the position and prestige of Lord Rama is in fact an attempt to establish the tyrannical rule of Ravana, the demon king. And if such a mistake is committed, then Hanuman, the valiant and invincible servant of Lord Rama, will have to come and rectify the situation by destroying the entire race of demons. In order to avoid this mistake at the outset, we must follow the path of karma yoga, taught by Lord Krishna. The karmis are foolish and ignorant, whereas the karma yogis are wise and learned. These wise men know that the nature of the material modes and material activities is exactly opposite to that of the soul. For this reason, the karma yogis never engage in material activities under the modes of material nature, as the karmis do, but rather perform karma yoga, which is meant to satisfy Lord Vishnu. Such wise men always keep themselves aloof from the close association with this phenomenal world, for they aspire to elevate the soul to its original spiritual position. They understand that the soul has come into contact with matter only by a freak arrangement. Therefore, although their ears, eyes, and other senses are involved with this phenomenal world, the sages refrain from material activities. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita 3:28, one who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed one, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Then in chapter 3, text 30 and 31, Lord Krishna describes the means for achieving such a liberated state. Quote, therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desire for profit, with no claim to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully, without envy, become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Identifying the self with the material body and mind, or thinking that the soul is material, or thinking that everything in relation to the body belongs to oneself, such illusions keep a person ignorant and bereft of self-realization. Therefore, Lord Krishna advises us to be situated in knowledge of the self. When we become spiritually aware, we can understand that the, quote, I, unquote, the self, is not the body or mind. We can realize that we are products of the superior spiritual energy of the Supreme Lord, and hence fully spiritual and eternal. With realization of these transcendental truths comes knowledge of the actual nature of the material energy in its pure form. And when these spiritual realizations gradually mature, one achieves natural distance from the dualities of material nature. At this stage of spiritual development, the false ego is destroyed. All false identifications and titles are removed, and we are liberated from the shackles of the illusory material energy on the strength of our spiritual association with the transcendence. No longer does Maya, illusion, entangle us in material activities. There are sufficient scriptural proofs to substantiate that Lord Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. Even scriptures like the Bible or the Quran declare that the absolute truth is the all-powerful, all-knowing supreme person. Throughout the Vedic literatures, that Supreme Person is declared to be Lord Krishna, and in the Bhagavad-Gita, Lord Krishna himself says that he is the absolute truth. Thus, simply by associating somehow with Lord Krishna, we can become illuminated about the Divine Self. When the sun rises in the morning, everything again becomes visible in the sunlight. Similarly, when the sun of Lord Krishna rises on the horizon of the transcendental spiritual sky of our realization, the darkness of illusion is immediately extirpated. Then only does one become purified and radiant with pristine beauty. These facts may sound exaggerated or mythical to a foolish man, but these are not fairy tales for little boys. They are the reality of the truth. Those who have taken shelter of Lord Krishna or his devotees can appreciate and fathom this subject matter. The only ones who will not accept this truth are those who are inimical towards Lord Krishna and who want to be the Supreme Lord themselves because of a perverted mind. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita 9:11, "Fools deride me when I descend in the human form," unquote. Such men are envious of the Lord. The truth about Lord Krishna and his transcendental position can never enter such confused and deluded brains. Okay, so that was the end of that section. The living entity's real identity. Next section, in praise of the Supreme Lord's devotees. Just marching right along here, isn't he? Let's see here, is this a long section? See, I'll probably get through this section, and that would be the end of that chapter. In praise of the Supreme Lord's devotees. The pious and saintly Vaishnavas understand the exact meaning of the Bhagavad-Gita. The simple message of the Gita is self-illuminated like the sun. Its knowledge is not hidden under a gloomy shroud of impersonalism. There's actually no room for extricating some alternative meaning from the and then giving a so-called esoteric dissertation on it. Oh. The devotees of Lord Krishna alone can fully take to heart the instructions of the Gita, and by acting accordingly they are liberated from the awesome and eternal enslavement of the cycle of karma. Such persons are not restricted to a particular country, race, or society. The Lord's devotees belong to a class of their own. They form a spiritual society unhindered by geographical conditions. God is not the monopoly of any particular group. Therefore, the message of the Gita, being universal, can be followed by anyone and everyone. After all, it is in the Bhagavad-Gita 9:32 that Lord Krishna has unconditionally declared, quote, "O son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, as well as Shudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination." The demons misinterpret the words of Lord Krishna concerning caste and social division, and they act capriciously on that basis. But this cannot blemish Lord Krishna or his words and the Bhagavad-Gita. 4.13 Lord Krishna clearly says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. The four divisions of society, namely intellectuals, administrators, merchants, and laborers, should be determined not by birth, but by merit, just as one becomes a doctor or a judge not by birthright, but by merit alone. In this world of the three modes of material nature, social classes have always existed. Therefore, a person's birth should never determine his caste or a class in society. The four classes were created according to a person's qualifications. Doctors are available in every country and society. Similarly, the four classes of men are also present in every country and every society. A son born to a doctor is not necessarily sure to grow up to be a doctor. Similarly, the progeny of the four classes of society do not automatically fix their future careers according to that of their parents. The scriptures describe in detail the divisions of society with their inherent characteristics. Therefore, we commit a serious mistake when we regard the different classes of men as belonging to particular countries or races. The Indian culture of today is restricted by the hereditary caste system and is kept in the custody of narrow-minded people who are like frogs in a well. If instead India had spread the transcendental message of Bhagavad-Gita in a generous manner befitting a noble Brahmana, then peace and tranquility in this world would not be in such an acute short supply. By the propagation of Brahminical culture, one should have greatly prospered. Instead, the Vedic culture has been seriously maimed by the imposition of the hereditary caste system, and this has had grievous adverse effects on the world. The Supreme Lord, in his incarnation as Lord Chaitanya, has opened many avenues to peaceful living by propagating the Brahminical culture, which he calls the religion of the soul. Those who are fortunate can emulate his life, following his divine teachings, and perfect their lives. Varnashram Dharma, the system of four social orders of life, is of two kinds, demoniac and transcendental. They have nothing in common. The divisions of society mentioned in the scriptures are present at all times and in all lands. If one with knowledge of the scriptures scrutinizes the different societies, he can easily discern the four classes. Persons possessing Brahminical or priestly qualities in varying degrees are seen in particularly every society. In modern terms, they are called intellectuals. All the other classes are also present. Therefore, it is an established fact that the four divisions of society, according to merit, were, and will be present everywhere. Those who think that Brahmanas and the other three castes exist only in Indian society are sadly mistaken. The scriptures have declared that in Kali-yuga everyone is born a Shudra, or a menial laborer, a member of the fourth class. Still, India has many persons endowed with high Brahminical characteristics, and without doubt such persons are also seen in every other country. Even every country has these four classes of men, determined according to merit. As a matter of fact, even those who are less than Shudras, the Chandalas or dog-eaters, are eligible to perform devotional service. If a Chandala becomes an elevated devotee of the Lord, then on the basis of his merit he should be respected by all other classes. There is such scriptural evidence in this regard. The Hari Bhakti Vilas 1091 states, quote, "A devotee Chandala achieves the same spiritual success as the devotee Brahmana." Unquote. And in the Bhagavatam 7.9.10, Prahlad Maharaj says, quote, "A devotee Chandala is many times more elevated than an ordinary ritualistic Brahmana." Unquote. Indeed, such a devotee Chandala can be the guru of the Brahmanas. This has been shown throughout history by many spiritual preceptors who were born in low castes but who initiated persons of higher castes. So the castes are classified according to merit and activity, but a pure devotee of the Lord is beyond all these classifications. He is transcendental to everything material. How can a person who is elevated beyond all castes, a saint, be adequately worshipped if he is worshipped only as a Brahmana? Therefore, one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the recipient of all good fortune in all countries and at all times. The Bhagavad-Gita mentions this in several places. Whatever part of this world a person belongs to, if he follows the instructions of the Supreme Lord in the Bhagavad-Gita, then he attains the transcendental platform and becomes even more elevated than a Brahmana. As Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita 4.24, quote, "A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute, or consumption is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature." And this verse explains how one can attain spiritual knowledge by performing activities that please the Supreme Lord. Sripad Shankaracharya propounded the impersonal theory, citing phrases like Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma, quote, "By nature everything is Brahman, spirit." Shankaracharya's theory has caused great confusion about established spiritual conclusions. But this phrase clearly supports the Gita verse quoted above. At this point, it is urgent that we discuss how one can perform devotional service for the Supreme Lord's pleasure. In this regard, it is also noteworthy how saintly leaders like King Janak executed karma yoga, or devotional service, by performing sacrifice. The aim of all sacrifices should be to please the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, or Krishna. Contact with matter is unavoidable in our present conditioned state, because while performing activities to sustain the body and to accomplish other purposes, we become intimate with material nature. But we can spiritualize these activities by performing every one of them as a service to Brahman, the Supreme Absolute Truth. Then these activities become yajna, or sacrifice. When the Vedic phrase sarvam kalavidam brahma is interpreted in this way, it is acceptable. In other words, when one invokes the spiritual or transcendental or absolute in everything, then matter loses its mundaneness, and then only can one realize the perfect meaning of the phrase sarvam kalavidam brahma. The Vaishnavas say that anything connected with the Lord in devotional service is transcendental. In other words, it is non-different from the Supreme Lord himself, Madhava. Just as an iron in long and constant touch with fire loses the characteristics of iron and becomes fiery, so everything offered in sacrifice to the Absolute, or the Transcendence, becomes absolute or transcendental. In the Bhagavad-Gita 14.27, Lord Krishna says, quote, "And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness." Unquote. This verse unequivocally declares that Brahman is Lord Krishna's bodily effulgence. Since Lord Krishna is the source of Brahman, devotional service to Lord Krishna establishes the true meaning of Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma. A sacrifice is properly performed only when all the sacrificial ingredients, the offerings, the fire, the ghee, and so on, become spiritualized, or reach the stage of Brahman by their contact with Lord Krishna. And since the performance of sacrifice culminates in the manifestation of real love for Lord Vishnu, loving devotional service to Lord Vishnu is the very best form of sacrifice. Such a stage can also be described as total absorption in Brahman. Persons who act in this way become progressively detached from matter and attached to Lord Krishna's devotional service. Thus they are able to purify the mirror of their hearts, extinguishing the forest fire of material existence, and become situated in their original spiritual position. They exist at a level of realization far above the impersonal realization of the Absolute Truth, for they are free from the contamination of vainly trying to merge with the Supreme and observing his absolute position. They never fall from this state of consciousness. Fully absorbed in their own transcendental identity, they are the complete masters of their senses. They are the perfect persons to rule this universe, if they so desire, and they alone bring good fortune to everyone. The conditioned souls, however, are unable to benefit the world in this way. The purified, rare souls continuously perform karma yoga and are always in a liberated state. In the Bhagavad-Gita 5.7 it is stated, "One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled." Unquote. There are those who live and act in a manner exactly opposite to that of the pure souls, who are constantly acting in karma yoga. Such fruitive workers have no connection with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Therefore, they cannot cleanse their hearts of material contamination. They are slaves of their sensual urges, spending their time in gratifying their senses according to their whims. Yet they shamelessly say that all their actions are performed by the Supreme Lord. Being cheaters and atheists, they speak like this so that their impious acts may be acceptable, and thus they inflict untold misfortunes and calamities on the world. By contrast, the pure, self-realized souls are constantly absorbed in serving Lord Krishna's lotus feet with their body, mind, and words. They never associate with atheistic people. These saintly persons know that although the spirit soul is infinitesimal, it is nevertheless endowed with minute free will at all times. The Supreme Lord is absolutely independent and can exercise absolute free will over all. Because the spirit soul is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Lord, the Lord does not annul his minute free will. Annul does not make it null. The Lord does not annul his minute free will. The spirit soul, unfortunately, misuses this God-given minute free will and falls into the dark well of nescience and illusion. Once the spirit soul takes shelter of Maya, the illusory material energy, he develops the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. The spirit soul loses his original characteristics and develops a new nature, which is controlled by the three modes of material nature, and this continues until such time as he transcends them. His actions are promoted accordingly. If it happened in another way, then material variegatedness would not be visible in this phenomenal world. So if a person fails to inform himself about the very subtle laws and workings of material nature, and at the same time he argues that all activities are sanctioned and inspired by the Supreme Lord, then he is reducing the Supreme Lord's position and making him out to be partial and unjust. The Lord never favors one and discriminates against another. Factually, he advises everyone to give up all material activities, which are by nature unstable and temporary. Because of forgetfulness of God, a man becomes an eternal victim of ignorance, which then colors all his actions. The Bhagavad-Gita 5.14 says, quote, "The embodied spirit, master of the city of his bodies, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature." Therefore, all activities except those performed as a sacrifice for Lord Vishnu are whimsical actions done of one's own volition. They are not performed under the Supreme Lord's direction or sanction. Since such activities stem from the material modes of nature, they are automatically under nature's total control. The Supreme Lord is merely an impartial and silent witness to such activities. The actions of the karma yogi or devotee are always connected with the absolute truth. Hence the devotee remains situated on the transcendental platform, far beyond the mundane sphere. In such a realized position, he does not see this material creation as separate from the Supreme Lord, but as a transformation of his energy. Such perceptions are unhindered by the material mode of nature. Indeed, the karma yogi's realization of everything inherent connection with the Lord Krishna is equiposed and transcendental. The Gita 5.18 states, quote, "The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, and a dog and dog-eater outcast." Unquote. The brahmana endowed with such learning is primarily in the mode of goodness. Among the animals, the cow is also in the mode of goodness. Elephants, lions, and so on are situated primarily in the mode of passion. Dogs and some humans, such as the chandalas and other outcasts, are in the mode of ignorance. The karma yogis, who are always meditating on the Supreme, never see these outer coverings of the soul, but rather the pure soul proper. This is true equal vision in relation to the Supreme. The karma yogis perceive that all elements and objects in this world are materials for the Supreme Lord's worship, and that all living entities are eternal servitors of Lord Krishna. One attains the pure stage of equal vision when one ceases to take into consideration the outer covering of the soul, the body, but rather is established in the soul's innate nature of serving the Lord. In this stage, one engages all things in devotional service to the Supreme Lord by using them as ingredients for sacrifice to please Lord Vishnu. The karma yogi knows that Lord Krishna is the only enjoyer and exploiter of all material objects, and that he is the only Lord and Master of all living entities. Forgetful of this relationship with Lord Krishna, the living entity falls into the clutches of Maya or illusion. Under the influence of Maya, he tries in vain to act the part of an enjoyer or a renouncer. But this is all a mere fantasy. In fact, the real affliction of the living entity is the pretense that he is the enjoyer or renouncer. All types of good and pious activities like yoga, the cultivation of knowledge, austerity, and renunciation are misapplied labor if they cannot kindle in the heart the flame of loving attraction for topics relating to the Supreme Lord. As Lord Krishna declares in Bhagavad-Gita 5.29, a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary in all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and the demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Unquote. See how much we got. Oh, it's a ways. I don't know if I can make it. Earlier in this book, we discussed the need for performing work as sacrifice. And now from this verse, the truth that Lord Krishna is the original Supreme Person, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, comes out with clarity. It must be understood that the results of sacrifice performed by the karma yogis, as well as the austerities of the knowledge seekers, are all meant to be enjoyed by Lord Krishna alone. The object of the yogi's meditation, the super soul within the heart, is actually a partial expansion of Lord Krishna. We will discuss this subject matter in detail later in this book. Lord Krishna is the well-wisher of the followers of all the different disciplines, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, meditation, and Bhakti-yoga. And because Lord Krishna is the well-wisher of everyone, he sends his close associates to the world to establish proper religious teachings in every millennium. Lord Krishna is the supreme master of all planets, the original Lord and the cause of all causes. The only path to peace is the path of gradual elevation in Karma Yoga, leading to realization of the absolute truth, Lord Krishna. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm starting to slow down. This is intense, dense stuff. So, thank you for tuning in. That was great. I'm going to post the link to Discord here on the YouTube chat. And if anybody wants to jump in there and discuss their ecstatic realizations on this red subject matter, there it is. I will be over there hanging out. So thank you so much for listening to this reading. It's been intense. It's good stuff. Please share the recording with your friends and all that good stuff. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.